We're speaking with Richard Mourdock, who's running for Senate in the great state of Indiana. Actually, my neighboring state. I am an Illinois guy. I don't like to advertise that too much here at CPAC.
My sympathies.
Yes, and we get that quite a bit from Indiana politicians, including your governor, who's happy to welcome a lot of our citizens and businesses across the border.
Indeed, Indiana actually has a billboard campaign up on US 8090 now,
right,
as people are leaving Illinois, encouraging them to bring their business to Indiana, and many are doing so.
And they are indeed. Well, Mr. Mourdock is running for Senate, and please tell us a little bit about your campaign.
Well, the campaign's going just incredibly well. We are almost exactly 3 months from primary day on May 8th. Our polls are just lights out right now. We're going to win this race against a 36-year incumbent, someone who's been identified by MSNBC as Barack Obama's favorite Republican, and of course that's Dick Luger.
Right.
That's a title I will never have, by the way, and I can assure you he's trying to run from it as much as possible.
Well, I can imagine that's an epithet in our world here, isn't it?
It is.
It's certainly not anything to be proud of. Well, tell me something. What everybody has a central theme, and what would be yours?
Well, I always talk about what I call my elevator speech real quickly in 3 points. Number one, we have to reduce the immoral level of debt we are carrying. As State Treasurer of Indiana, I live in the world of finance and numbers, and I understand the risks that we currently bear. Number two, we have to change the tax code in this country from taxing the creation of wealth to taxing consumption, because 47% of all American households no longer have skin in the game. They don't care how big government grows, and we've got to change that. And last but not least, we've got to get the jackboot of federal regulations off the necks of small businesses. We cannot have a recovery in this country until we do that.
Yes, I'm very much onto the regulation bandwagon there, the eliminating regulations. Obama has claimed over and over and over again that he wants to do it, and what's the proof of that? Has he ever really done it?
No, he hasn't. In fact, this is the only city in America where the person who works here generally sees the product of a good day's work, a new book of regulations. I mean, that's why government keeps growing here. That's why this is the only city in America that's residential property values have gone up through the Great Recession. It's because government is growing bigger, and that means more and more regulation.
Right. Well, speaking of Obama's penchant to rule instead of govern, we have one of the biggest controversies of recent days over the abortion issue and the religious conscience issue. As a senator, what would you do if you were in Senate right now, for instance, to take that power back away from Obama and reassert the authority of the Senate?
I thought one of the best headlines of the last several years has been the Wall Street Journal the other day, and writing of this story said Obama administration to Catholics, go to hell. Clearly, the Obamacare is something that we absolutely have to repeal. I mean, health care is a big issue in this country, and those of us who are conservatives have to come up with a lot better idea to replace Obamacare with some real pro-market, free market type solutions. In my travels around Indiana, I continue to be impressed with how many doctors tell me how much of their time each day is spent just dealing with forms for the federal government. They want to practice medicine. They want to increase their productivity measured by the number of patients they deal with per day, and they can't do so because of government. This is another case where government regulations are absolutely killing us in a vital area, which is healthcare.
And how many doctors have told you that they'll just quit being doctors if Obamacare becomes enforced?
Great point. I'm already seeing that. And one of the real concerns I hear is discussion of something called concierge medicine. And what that is doctors in general practice would basically go to, say, 100 families, and each family would pay them $1,000 per year on a contract, and those are the only patients that doctor sees. He's there for them 24 hours a day, and it becomes a very specialized field of medicine that clearly the well-to-do can afford, but it certainly limits what the availability of healthcare is overall.
Right, right. Well, to go on to another one of Obama's wonderful things is his claim that like I said, we already talked about regulations. We've already talked about his attack on religion. But the Keystone Pipeline is an extremely important thing. I mean, that's energy independence here. What do you think about that field?
Well, I'm a geologist by training. Spent 31 years in the energy business, so I know more than a little bit about this. Now, first of all, on the pipeline, I'm here to tell you, if that pipeline ran through any blue state, or even a battleground state that was possibly going to be a blue state, there would be construction underway. It's all red states that deal with it. I don't think that's a coincidence. The idea that Mr. Obama wants us to become more and more dependent instead of independent is appalling, from the sense that that man is commander-in-chief, and we need to be looking at this as a national defense issue. We have a lot of energy resources in this country we can develop. You're never going to hear me say, though, that I think we can be independent for liquid energy, for oil and gas. I'm sorry, for oil specifically, simply because those resources are harder to find. There's a lot of oil in North Dakota and South Dakota in the Bakken Formation, but it's not $100 a barrel oil or even $150. It's going to have to be a lot higher price. The resources are there. We need to be developing the technologies now to pull them out.
Well, of course, one of the most famous and important duties of a senator is the advice and consent, role for judges. And we know that right now the Supreme Court is just barely on a conservative level. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that is one of the key reasons I got in this race. When many members of the Republican State Committee in Indiana came to me and asked me to run against Senator Luger, the thing I heard over and over again was his support of judges like Ruth Bader Ginsburg,
right,
Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan. He defends those votes, as many senators do, by saying, well, elections should have consequences. Presidents get to choose who they want. Well, that's half right. Elections to the U.S. Senate should have consequences, too. And it is called advice and consent, not rubber stamp.
Right, exactly.
Clearly, there's not enough diligence being paid by a number of senators there, and sadly by my Republican senator, Dick Luger, to make sure we have more conservatives on the bench. This past week, when Ruth Bader Ginsburg was asked about what kind of constitution Egypt should adopt, and she specifically never mentioned the United States Constitution other than to say it's antiquated. Pardon me? Just because
right,
it's over 200 years old doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
Right. Well, one of the biggest problems we have, and I think I mentioned it a minute ago, is the fact that our legislators have abdicated their responsibility. They're no longer seem to be jealous of their own prerogatives in government, and they're abdicating their responsibility to both the president and to the courts, and maybe even more specifically to the courts.
Absolutely. One of the most chilling moments I've ever had as an American took place during the President's recent State of the Union address. You'll recall that he gave a comment about all of his programs, all of his plans, and then he said, I will do this with or without the Congress.
Right.
That was just a moment that, well, it didn't give me a tingle up my leg. It was a little chill down my spine, because how dare a president stand there and basically say he's going to just avoid the Congress of the United States. This is dangerous stuff he's saying, and it needs to be reeled in.
Well, speaking of danger, one of the other national news things is the fact of perhaps Israel bombing Iran. If that were to come true, if Israel were to hit Iran over Iran's nuclear program, what would your response as a senator be to that?
Well, first of all, let's go where we are today. Israel is our best friend, if not of all nations, certainly in the Middle East. It is a tiny nation that has every right to protect its sovereignty. Clearly, when those nations that are surrounding it or near it want to talk constantly about wiping it off the map, it has to be ready to defend itself. If the United States will not support that friend, then it needs to be able to maintain its sovereignty, to do what it needs to do, and if they should take that step, we need to be there and ready to support them.
Indeed. Well, we want to thank Richard Mourdock, who's running for Senate in the great state of Indiana, a Hoosier state, right next door to my home of Illinois.
And keep sending those businesses to Indiana. We're glad to have them.
Oh, if I had a dime for every Indiana politician that told me that so far, I might be a billionaire.
And we're also home right now to two of your former governors who are in the federal penitentiary.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Of the 5 or 6 or so that have been sent to jail over the years.
Probably soon to get another.
They seem to be lining up for that honor. Well, thanks very much, Richard. We appreciate your time. And good luck. Oh, give us some your information on your website and whatnot.
Thank you. Please go to richardmourdock.com. Mourdock spelled a little unusual. It's Mourdock, richardmourdock.com. Be glad to have people check us out and help us, please.
Fantastic. Thanks very much.
Thank you.